Quiet Strength, Chapter 19, Staying the Course. Should I come back to coach the Colts in 2006? I spent a couple of days considering that question. After all that had happened, I wanted to make certain that I could focus and lead the team at the level the players deserved. I told Jim Irsay that although I planned to be back, I wanted to see how my mind and my spirit held up once the adrenaline of the 2005 season had worn off. And deep down inside, I wanted to show people that all the things I believed about hope and faith and dealing with heartache were more than just lip service. Lorna and I prayed about it a lot before the playoff game against Pittsburgh. After all, I was sure I wanted to come back, and Lauren wanted me to as well. We felt it was the right thing to do for our family. I wasn't ready to give up coaching yet, and we needed to press on if we could. Within a week following the end of the season, I told Jim I was sure I'd be able to do it. I was coming back for 2006, which was not obviously an easy decision for him. Everything that happened to him the previous year, right? Is it a good time for him to step away and focus on family? Or, what is his next step? But he felt very strongly that he should return for that 2006 season. There had been remarkable similarities between my first few years in Indianapolis and Tampa. Both teams had shown improvement. Both had stretches of great play. Both had reached the playoffs. And both teams had ended a year after a year with disappointing playoff losses. Just as the Bucks hadn't been able to get past Philly, the Colts had come up short against their nemesis, New England. The Glazers' response was understandable, and it's really the norm in the NFL. They decided to make a coaching changes in hopes that something new and different would get the team over that hump. Jim Irsay's response was to stand by me. He never lost his belief that we could do it. Both strategies produced the same result the following season, right? Because after Tony was fired from Tampa, right, that next year they went to the Super Bowl. And then here, not spoiler alert, right, he gets to stay with the Colts, and then they are going to end up making the Super Bowl. I don't know what the lesson is in that, but I love Jim's approach. With all the disappointment of the previous year, I really needed the support of my bosses, and it was great to know that he and Bill Polian were solidly behind me. I remained convinced that we didn't need to change the way we did things. In the meantime, however, we were hearing talk from the experts that our window of opportunity had closed, that we would never win the big one. This time, I fought the urge to do what we had done in Tampa, making short-term changes in an effort to get over an imaginary barrier. We had been putting ourselves in a position to succeed every year. We just needed to play up to our potential in the postseason. But even though I knew this, I also knew it would be a hard sell when so many people were telling our players differently. During the offseason, we lost about 40% of our offense when running back Aaron James decided to sign with Arizona. The media saw this as the latest and clearest sign of the apocalypse. The Colts were finished. Inside the building, however, we were comfortable because we had Dominic Rhodes. We also believed that in time, Joseph Ada, our new first-round draft pick, could fill the position Aaron had handled for 6 years. Mike Vanderdat was a free agent as well, and he signed with Dallas. That was their kicker that he's talked about in previous chapters. Ironically, we signed Adam Vinatieri from our arch-rival, the Patriots, to replace him. That miss against Pittsburgh had been Mike's last kick for the Colts. And unfortunately, even though he made so many big kicks for us, he'll probably be remembered for the one he missed. Throughout the offseason, Lauren and I continued to work through our own feelings of loss and grief. Grieving parents and counseling pastors had told us that the death of a child can wreak havoc on even the best of marriages, but we were bound and determined that this wouldn't happen to us. Having said that, we quickly realized while losing a child is so hard on a marriage, no two people grieve in the same way or recover at the same rate. I don't think Lauren had very many good days at all during those first few months, and when she would finally have one, I would be having a bad day. And different things sent each of us into tailspins. Things that bothered her didn't always have the same effect on me, while some things that tore me up weren't a big deal to her. But gradually, we began to have some more normal days together. Eventually, we began to return to the days when we could just talk and interact as husband and wife. Eric and Tiara seemed to be healing a little more each day as well. Jordan and Jade talked about Jamie the most, often asking where he was and when they would see him again. This gave us plenty of opportunities to talk about heaven and God's gift of salvation. Although their young minds couldn't understand why Jamie wouldn't be coming back to see us, they could understand the concept of a beautiful place and a God who loves them. In spite of our pain over losing Jamie, Lauren and I understood that we needed to keep living. In the summer of 2006, we went ahead with our prior plans and adopted Justin. When I see my in-laws now in their 80s with a high schooler and middle schooler at home, I'm sure I'm seeing my future. So despite the loss of their child, Jamie, Tony and his wife Lauren do continue to adopt kids, right, and provide a home for kids who otherwise would not have one. And their latest one is Justin. Justin was born when Lauren, Tiara, Jordan, and Jade were in Pennsylvania visiting Lauren's family. Eric and I were in Indianapolis as the team finished its off-season workouts, and we were just about to join the family in Pittsburgh when we got the call that Justin had arrived in the world. "Tony, just go by the hospital, pick him up, and bring him to us." Lauren tried to make it sound routine, like it was the kind of thing people do every day. She couldn't fool me. "What? Does that seem like a good idea?" Lauren's plan seemed like a good idea to her, but I wasn't so sure. "Of course it does. It makes perfect sense." Lauren's calm demeanor is tough to counter, especially when she couples facts with logic. I was valiant, but I could feel defeat right around the corner. "But he's a brand new baby. What if he cries or something? What do I do?" "He'll need 3 things: to eat, to be changed, and to sleep. He'll probably sleep all the way anyway. Just put him in the car seat and start driving. And if he doesn't sleep all the way here, I'm sure a 50-year-old father of 5 and his 14-year-old son can figure it out." Wily mothers and their logic. I'm glad Mark Merrill didn't post a transcript of that conversation on the website of All Pro Dad. By the way, I'm embarrassed to say that it wasn't the last time we discussed the plan. I must have called Lauren back 5 times, trying to convince her to fly home and help me. Justin slept the entire drive. At the 2006 training camp, I explained our strategy to the players. "We're going to be fine," I said, "as long as we think we're fine. If we don't, we're going to have problems. We're going to do what we do, stay the course. Our biggest temptation will be to think we need to do something different." That year, my word picture for the players was from a story Denny Green had shared with me about quarterback Joe Montana. Joe had been with the San Francisco 49ers for a number of years, helping them win several Super Bowls. Year after year, the team ran head coach Bill Walsh's same offense. At the beginning of each season, Bill installed the offense the exact same way, with the plays installed in the same order. The first play he installed every year was 22Z-in. Joe Montana could run 22Z-in his sleep. When Paul Hackett became offensive coordinator for the 49ers, he installed 22Z-in, just as Bill Walsh instructed him. Paul realized that Joe knew more about 22Z-in than he did, but when the meeting was over, Paul saw that Joe had taken 3 pages of notes. He documented exactly how Paul wanted to run the play, as well as all of the basics of 22Z-in and its details. That's what a professional does. Okay, I think that's a great story, that just because we think that we might know everything and we've done something the same way for years, it doesn't mean like we should ignore those or an authority, right? That we should still always pay close attention to everything, right? And never let like our minds slip, or the way that we approach the game, our job, whatever else it might be in life. That's what we need to do this season, I told the Colts. You'll think you've heard it all before, but you can't get mentally lazy. We have to stay sharp and continue to work and improve, all through camp and all through the season. We're going to do the same things over and over. That's how we're going to win. Then I ran through the same list of goals I use every training camp. Top 5 in the NFL in giveaway takeaway ratio. Top 5 in the NFL in fewest penalties. Top 5 in overall special teams. Make big plays. Don't give up big plays. I talked about what we had done in 2005, things we had done well and areas where we could improve. Then I gave them a copy of an article I had read in the Houston Chronicle. They'd often heard me paraphrase Matthew 16:26, my favorite Bible verse. What good is it to gain the whole world but lose your soul? To me, one of the implications of that verse is that Christ not only promises us eternal life, but also a life that's more abundant here and now. But according to the Houston Chronicle article, many NFL players weren't finding that abundant life, as evidenced by the following statistics. 65% of NFL players leave the game with permanent injuries. 25% of NFL players report financial difficulties within the first year of retirement. 50% of failed NFL marriages occur in the first year after retirement. 78% of NFL players are unemployed, bankrupt, or divorced within 2 years of retirement. The suicide rate for retired NFL players is 6 times greater than the national average. Okay, those are really sad statistics. I'd love for you to pause this recording and read back over those, because you think about these guys who seem to have everything, right? The job that they've always dreamed of, all this money, and yet look at those statistics, right? Are they truly happy? Are they truly pursuing the right things? Guys, please keep this in mind. Football is a temporary job. We're going to do everything we can to win, but we're not going to ruin the rest of our lives over football. Then I gave them a handout I'd given every team that I've coached, entitled 5 Things That May Get You into USA Today. USA Today is like a newspaper, essentially. I listed the 5 things in large print to grab their attention: alcohol or illegal drugs, being out after 1 a.m., driving more than 20 miles per hour over the speed limit, guns, women you don't know well enough or that you know too well. I've always believed that if our players were careful in these 5 areas, they wouldn't have many off-field problems. During training camp, I read another article suggesting that the regular season didn't matter to the Colts, that only the playoffs were important. The author said he didn't care if we went 16-0 because it was meaningless. The playoffs were all that mattered. I held the article up in front of the team. Don't buy into this trash. Everything we do matters. This kind of thinking will destroy us. We cannot have the impression that we will glide through the regular season and into the playoffs, that our wins along the way don't matter. That is the perfect prescription for not making the playoffs. This is the kind of thinking that destroys talented teams. We wanted to start the season well. We knew the league would schedule the Manning Bowl, Peyton and the Colts, against his brother Eli and the Giants, for opening weekend. Following that, we were set to play several division games. We didn't want to dig a hole for ourselves at the start, and we didn't. We started 9-0, but it was different than 13-0 of 2005. In 2005, we were playing well and winning by large margins. In 2006, we were struggling to win. We were coming from behind, sometimes on the final drive of the game. Often we were beaten statistically, even though we were able to win the game. The media didn't think we were very impressive, and they were right. But I realized that this was a good sign. We were winning games the hard way, showing character and building resolve. We are playing together, even without playing our best. I kept telling our coaches that here we were, undefeated, and we hadn't even played well yet. I thought we were in very good shape. Then we lost in Week 10 at Dallas and in Week 12 at Tennessee, although both of those games were decided on the final drive. It wasn't as if we were being beaten badly. In Week 13, we headed to Jacksonville. The Jaguars always played us well, and we knew we would be in for a tough day. We didn't expect to lose 44-17, however, giving up the second highest number of rushing yards in the NFL since 1970. The players and coaches were stunned. We hadn't lost a game like that in a long time, and most of the concern was with our defense. But when I watched the tape, I didn't see anything that couldn't be fixed. I met with the coaches on Monday morning and told them we would be fine. We just need to play a little faster, a little sharper, a little better. No personnel changes, no scheme changes. If anything, we'd simplify things a little to make sure the defense was playing fast and carrying out the correct assignments. I told the team the same thing on Wednesday. My talk had the same effect as the talk I gave in 2004 when we gave up 45 points to the Chiefs. Everyone in the room exhaled. Sometimes change is needed, but usually people simply need reassurance and encouragement. This was one of those times. We split our next 2 games and headed into our final regular season game against Miami. We already knew we wouldn't get a first-round bye this year. No matter what we did against Miami, we'd have to play in the first round of the playoffs. But if we beat the Dolphins, we would at least ensure that we were number 3 seed for the playoffs, because only the top 2 seeds get that first-round bye. Most people didn't think there was much difference between being seeded 3rd or 4th, but I did. I told our guys that 2006 might be the year the 3rd seed mattered. San Diego and Baltimore were at the top of the AFC standings, but there wasn't a dominant team. Upsets were still possible. With a couple of playoff upsets, there was a chance the 3rd seed could end up hosting the AFC Championship game. And if that happened, we wanted to be that 3rd seed and host the game in Indy. We came out and played well. Miami was a good test for us in many ways. They had a good defense, and their offense had really started to roll behind their running back, Ronnie Brown. We won 27-22 and finished the year undefeated at home. Still, we had lost 4 of our last 7 games. None of the experts were picking us to do much in the playoffs, but I felt good about our chances. We would be getting a couple of defensive players back in time for the playoffs, including safety Bob Sanders, a physical and inspirational leader for us. He had missed 11 games with injuries that year and had not been able to play any back-to-back games during the regular season. We weren't certain whether we'd have him after the first playoff game, but we hoped he would at least help us get off to a good start. We opened the first round of playoffs against Kansas City Chiefs, Herm Edwards' new team, at home. Everybody outside of our building was certain the Chiefs would be the end of us. We had had a lot of trouble stopping the run in the regular season, and the Chiefs had Larry Johnson, a big, strong back. All the commentators were having flashbacks to the Jacksonville game, especially since we were last in the NFL in rushing defense. One reporter asked me if I thought our run defense could ever slow down Larry Johnson. I said that while I didn't think we would hold him to 12 carries for 25 yards, I thought we'd do fine. So here all these people from Tony's past are starting to pop up, all of his closest friends that are now head coaches he's having to go against, such as Herm Edwards with the Kansas City Chiefs. When the Chiefs arrived in town for our Saturday game, Lauren and I went to dinner on Friday night with Herm and Leah Edwards. The Bears had earned a first-round bye in the NFC playoffs, so Lovey and Marianne Smith drove down from Chicago to join us at P.F. Chang's in Indianapolis. Right off the bat, Herm brought up what we were all thinking. Lovey's Bears had the easiest road in the days ahead. With a bye and a home field advantage, they were the favorites in the NFC. After Saturday, either Herm or I would still have to win 2 more games to get to the Super Bowl. It wasn't out of the realm of possibility that either Herm or I would face Lovey and the Bears in the Super Bowl. If that did happen, we all knew the other one would be there to cheer. After an early meal, I got up to go because it was time for both Herm and me to head back to our hotels for team chapel and meetings. They didn't think I saw it, but I caught the look that Herm and Lovey exchanged, a look that said, "Which one of us is going to get stuck with the bill this time?" Herm broke up laughing as I paid the bill. He claimed it was the first time in 30 years I had paid. Who knows? He may be right. A free meal was the highlight of that weekend for Herm, I'm afraid. While we didn't hold Larry Johnson to 12 carries for 25 yards, he ended up with only 13 for 32, and the Chiefs had only 126 yards of total offense. Our defense was stellar in our 23-8 victory. They'd played better and with more energy. In addition to our defense playing well, I was encouraged by the way we won the game as a team. 5 years earlier, I'd stressed that every component was absolutely necessary to our success as a team. Now, on a big stage, Peyton hadn't played particularly well by his standards, but our defense had stepped up to help carry us to victory. In prior years, if Peyton didn't play well, we usually lost. This was a welcome change. So they win their game against the Kansas City Chiefs as a team. So when Peyton doesn't do well, right, the defense steps up and is there to help carry the team to victory. Next, we headed to Baltimore to play the second-seeded Ravens. We had played them in Baltimore to start the 2005 season. Back then, the return of the Colts to Baltimore hadn't been much of a news item. Now it was the storyline. The Colts left Baltimore in 1984, when Jim Irsay's father moved the club to Indianapolis via a caravan of moving vans. We saw footage of those vans continuously during that weekend in Baltimore. As I watched the coverage, I noticed that while they may have been packing their belongings in the dark, it didn't appear as though they were doing it in the rain, like he had to do when he was fired from Tampa. With this matchup being portrayed as a revenge game for the Ravens, the team created when the Cleveland Browns moved to Baltimore in 1996, Clyde and I wondered if we should still take our customary walk. Baltimore's Inner Harbor is picturesque, but we weren't sure just how worked up the fans might have become about this game. We weren't looking for any excitement. We decided to go anyway, and most of the people we saw greeted us and wished us good luck. And the Inner Harbor was beautiful, as always, on that unseasonably warm January morning. The ride to the stadium was a different story. We'd played before raucous crowds in Philly, New York, and elsewhere, but this crowd was vicious. As our bus approached the stadium parking lot, it was obvious that these fans, dressed in purple Ravens gear, were not the same people we had seen in the Inner Harbor. Fortunately, I had warned our guys about this. I knew we would see the WWE wrestling style introductions with their defense coming out through smoke to whip the crowd into a frenzy. But eventually there would be a kickoff, and it wouldn't matter how much the crowd was pumped up. The crowd wouldn't be playing. After the opening kickoff, this was going to be a normal 60-minute game. It was, and we controlled it. Baltimore had the league's top defense, so our offense wasn't able to get many big plays. We had a number of solid drives, but it had to settle for field goals. For the second week in a row, however, our defense played lights out, and we led 12-6 in the middle of the fourth quarter. We had the ball and were trying to run out the clock. We relied on our run game and held the ball for over 7 minutes, throwing just one pass. We took the clock down to 26 seconds as the Ravens called their last timeout. We faced fourth down from Baltimore's 17-yard line, and I had a decision to make. I'd been thinking about this moment for the entire drive, knowing it might come down to this. If we ran the ball again, but didn't make the first down, they would have to go more than 80 yards to score. But we only had a 6-point lead, and a fluke touchdown would beat us. If we kicked a field goal, the game would be over. They wouldn't be able to score twice in the last 26 seconds to overcome our 9-point lead. But disaster could still strike if they blocked our field goal attempt and ran it back for a game-winning touchdown. It was not unthinkable. Ed Reed, one of the Ravens' great players, had blocked many kicks in his career. We had the best kicker in the game, Adam Vinatieri. Still, the memory of my decision to kick deep to New England's Bethel Johnson in 2003 flashed through my mind. I've learned that our past often prepares us for the future, if we allow it to. God provides us with opportunities to learn from these things that have happened to us. I remember the New England game in 2003, and I remembered Herm's miracle in the Meadowlands. Did I want to give the Ravens that remote chance to score quickly? People sometimes ask me if I pray during the games. I certainly do, and this was one of those instances where I prayed for wisdom. I decided to kick the field goal. Situations like this were exactly why we had signed Adam. He nailed the kick, tying a playoff record with his 5th field goal of the night. It was not until the next day, when I was watching the film, that I saw how close Reed had actually come to blocking it. Adam had gotten the ball up quickly, just over the tips of Ed's outstretched hands. The flight home after a road win is always fun, but this trip was extra special. We were headed to the AFC Championship game again, even if we didn't know who our opponent would be. We enjoyed celebrating on the plane. The following afternoon, Lauren, Eric, and I were at home watching San Diego host New England. This was when the 3rd seed might mean something. If the Chargers won, we would travel to San Diego for the AFC Championship game. But if 4th-seeded New England won, we would host them here in the RCA Dome. San Diego did some uncharacteristic things during that playoff game, going for it on 4th and long instead of kicking a field goal and passing when they usually would have run. Things that were different from what they would likely have done during the regular season. Late in the game, the Chargers' Marlon McCree intercepted a pass that should have ended the game, but after being hit, he fumbled it back to New England. Watching the action, I kept thinking of the number of times I told our team not to do anything different in the playoffs. Marty Schottenheimer was San Diego's coach, and he prepares as hard as anyone I know. Marty, just do what you do, I thought. It seemed like poetic justice, though. Somehow I knew that if we ever reached the Super Bowl, we'd have to do it by beating New England. Besides, I really wanted to play the AFC Championship game in front of our fans in Indianapolis. The buzz around town began as soon as New England upset San Diego 24-21. Lauren and I took the kids to Chuck E. Cheese's after the game, and fans spotted us. "Coach, we're hosting the AFC Championship game! And can you believe we're playing New England again?" Indianapolis was alive all week. So despite the tragedy in his personal life, Tony Dungy decides to go back and be the head coach of the Indianapolis Colts for the 2006 season. And it's not as easy as a season as the previous one. Yes, they do a lot of wins, but they're kind of gritty wins. And they end up doing really well. They're making it to the playoffs. And now they're going to face New England, okay, which has kind of been a sore spot for them these past several years. But it's exciting for Tony. He's so glad he came back to coach. And now he's going to the AFC Championship game against the New England Patriots.